This is another follow-along video for a patient of mine who's having issues getting the glutes back in action after an injury. The idea with this is to help with hip abduction and some stability, single leg stance type of things. Given where that person's at, we're starting from the ground. The drills we're going to cover are variations of the frog pose and fire hydrant drill, right, with the intention that this will eventually escalate towards the single leg squats, the lunges, the things that I more traditionally do. So let's get started. First thing is going to be variations of the frog pose, right? The way this starts off, you're going to open up the hips. To the best of your ability, you're going to get your medial side of the knee. Medial side is an inner side of the ankle on the ground. Do the same thing on the other side. Now, depending on how mobile you are, you're going to be able to do a lot of this versus a little bit. Doesn't matter for now. Work with what you got. Similarly, because of whatever you're working on, you might notice some pain in the knees where it's bearing a load on the floor. So if you need yoga mats, if you need blankets, pillows, whatever, to take the pain down, you'll get used to it eventually, but you don't have to, right? Make it so it's comfortable. You don't want to be fighting the drill. You want the drill to be comfortable so that you can challenge the drill where it's supposed to be challenging, right? I don't care how much pain you can tolerate in your medial knees. That's not the point of this. Once you're in this position, you can either start entering, as in pushing into it, and pulling out of the position, back and forth, using your arms to drive you back into your hips, and then using your feet to drive you out of your hips, right? So position 1 looks like 1, 2, 1, and 2, making it a point that it's an active movement to get in and out. Depending on your range, depending on your support, it might be better off to do it down on your elbows. This is all fine. It's just whatever gets the job done for you. Another option for taking the load off the knees, if you take a look at what I just did with my ankles, if you can load onto your toes, that redistributes the load a little bit, makes it more comfortable, but it does put some work onto the dorsiflexors. All right, so if you have enough toe range of motion, this is actually really comfortable, whereas this is a little painful, even for me. In case you need more incentive, torque on your toe mobility. So push with your hands, sink in, push with your feet, push out. As you sink back in, try to arch your back. I'm trying to let my belly button sink into the floor a little bit. As I run this motion, I'm trying to arch my back. I'm trying to create extension. For a lot of the martial arts work, the combative work, we train in athletic ready position, which requires some level of tucking and spinal flexion. This is the time to actively not do that, right? We're not getting floppy, right? We're not caring. We're caring about the other direction. Training extension, knowing that that's the trait that's relatively neglected in the more power-heavy, explosive movements. Once you develop some range, widen out a little bit, reestablish your base, and do it again. There are several little sub-drills you can sneak into this if you want to. For example, if you look what I'm doing with my hands, this is also a good way to work in some extra wrist mobility if I want to. Right? We could do it like this. But we don't have to. We could do it on knuckles. You can work on turning your elbows out, similar to how you would during an L-sit or a planche type of progression, right? Learning how to do that to create some stiffness in the upper T-spine. As I mentioned before, you can run this with your toes pointed down or with your toes dorsiflexed. You can also run it with the elbows bent. The point being, you can maneuver other drills into this to be more effective with your time, depending on your broader goals. There's a lot you can accomplish here. Once you have a couple reps of that, what you're then going to do is extend one of the legs. Now notice what I'm doing here. We'll do on both sides. Stance leg, extended leg. This increase in leverage will let me do the same drill, but involve more of my adductors and hamstrings to create a deeper range, greater challenge. In a nice controlled fashion, switch to the other side. And run this as much or as little as you need to feel like you're getting mobility in the inner hip socket. You can play with how upright and arched your back is, depending on what you have. Same thing, you can take it from down here if you need to. But the point is you want to localize the work to your inner thighs, your adductors, your hamstrings, and the hip socket. You want to be able to feel rotation as you're going about. So whatever angles gets you to get that will be fundamentally correct. Don't overthink it just yet. We'll do one more set of that, just because I need to demonstrate the next maneuver as well. And it's relatively early in the day, so I'm actually warming up a little bit for real. Something you could sometimes do, watch what I do, is I can turn my torso a little bit to get better motion. It might be worth practicing that, because that'll actually go into the next drill. Because whereas the frog pose has this very deliberate forward and back aspect to it, once I start adding this rotational component, it becomes the next drill. In which case I'm going to work on my hips internal and external rotation. The way we're going to do this, take a look at this position here. Cool transition, right? I'm making this base out of my two legs. I'm going to rotate my torso, leading with my gaze. And as I turn, I'm going to turn as far as I can, keeping this shin as my pivot, right? Imagine this is a car, this is the axle, right? I'm going to pivot around this foot and turn. And turn. Things you can do to extend this further. Position 1, you can actively rotate this hip out as far as you can. Turn it in, turn your head. Rotate. Something you can do if you have the range for it is turn far enough to actually grab to give yourself something to aim for. Let's do it on the other side. Same basic principle. Same position. Make sure I'm in frame, right? Notice from some of the other videos, this is almost the same setup as a straddle QL. Right? The other day I mentioned, if we keep it chest pointing forward, side bending, then I'm working the adductors, the QL. The hamstrings, the QL, I'm sorry. If I focus on rotation instead of side bending, now I'm focusing on my hip, which is, and my lumbar spine, which again, it's not that it's right or wrong, it's what are you trying to accomplish? Same initial setup, very different training stimulus. So, I'm going to turn my foot down, try to press my toe into the floor, turn my head to the left as far as I can, use my arms to support as much as I need, set up a good base, and then once we have this shape, I'm going to rotate and turn and get used to really working this rotational aspect in. And again, the idea is I want to develop my ability to comfortably twist that. That's ultimately the skill that I'm working through. Okay. All right, once you have that, practice that as much or as little as you need to get into the next drill. The next drill is going to be a little bit more variable. There is an exercise called a fire hydrant drill, which is done from the elbows and knees or the hands and knees, depending on how you're set up. Right? What you do traditionally, let your lower back sink into a little bit of extension, drop that belly button down. Okay? What you're going to do is practice raising the training side leg off the ground to the side, just like that. The way the weight bearing is set up, most of my stability is coming from the same side arm, opposite side leg, as in, when I do this motion, notice this hand isn't quite involved. Same thing. It's not quite involved. You can tell this eventually becomes something like the bird dog from more McGill style training, or even, let's see if I can do this. All right, this is no warm up, all right? Got it. A one arm, one leg push up. That requires a lot of this, by the way. So, back to the training. What you're going to do, tabletop position, right? Let the belly button sink down. Bear weight, same side arm, opposite side leg, and just practice opening up that hip on that one side. Same thing here. Now, for many folks, including the person I'm filming this for, that motion as of right now is not quite ready. And that's fine. That's why we're doing all this stuff. So we're going to walk through variations to localize the stimulus to do the job you want it to do. Because it doesn't need to look like that. It needs to look the way it does to serve you. So, things we can do. As you get stronger, how do you add load to this? You extend the leg and do the same thing with the leg out. Because the extra length increases the leverage, therefore making it harder. Notice how extraneous this hand is. It's not necessary for the drill at all. For those who don't have that, you can use your torso in shifting your center of gravity to reduce the load instead. What do I mean by that? If you're not at the point where you can comfortably raise this leg up, what you can do is shift your center of gravity over the stance leg to reduce the load. What ends up happening is what ends as a fire hydrant drill looks like starts off as you simply learning how to rotate your pelvis and your torso, right? This teeter-tottering thing. And you would think, what's the purpose of that? What's the benefit of that? We're turning a concentric, eccentric thing into a setup, into an isometric, eccentric thing. What do I mean by that? Watch this. Fire hydrant pose, traditional, concentric, eccentric, sounds good. Instead, what we can do, all right, I'm going to put all the load on my right side leg, tilt my body over so that it's going to be my opposite side leg, opposite side arm taking the weight, and just lean. And now this got really easy. Now, all I need to do is slowly bring out this leg, and as I bring out the leg, the difficulty increases, and now this became an isometric. I can hold this position for however much time and bring it back. Why would that be useful? So, this is a good time to talk about tendons. Tendons respond very well to isometric tension and eccentric tension. Eccentric loads, isometric loads. If somebody has tendon pain, tendinopathy, tendinitis, depending on the phase that they're in, this type of setup would be far more beneficial than this type of setup. It's not that one's fundamentally right or wrong, it's what does the athlete need, right? So if you're telling me you need an isometric version of the thing, that setup might really help you, right? So flexed hip, flexed knee, my toes are pointed down, right? What I'm gonna do, set up my base opposite side of my leg, tilt my body, and it almost looks like a side mount, or like, you get the idea. But that's the point. From here, where I take this position, and then from here, I can just practice kicking this leg out. Same thing done on the other side, right? I'm gonna tilt, lean, take all the load away from this, and the act of me pushing this leg out is the training stimulus. And I can hold for tension. In the eccentric isometric context, what you could do realistically, because how do you count this? How do you quantify this, right? Instead of going for sets and reps, you would go for time under tension. So what you can do is set a timer, right? Put it right there. Get into your setup, extend the leg, set the timer off, maintain a height, right? You determine the height that you want, and build up into 2 minutes of total tension. You're not going to do it all in one set, or rather, if you can, you need to move on to something more challenging. But you do as many sets as necessary to get to your 2 minutes in the position, and then you move on. What does moving on look like? So, a couple options, right? Depending on what you need to develop. You could just take that strength and go right back into the fire hydrant drill, right? Bent leg or straight leg. But sometimes it's worthwhile to develop your single leg stance. Work on this leg, actually. What does that look like? Tilt the balance here. Same drill. Extend the hip. And just learn to be here. And run the same drill. Now I'm using both hips. I get some glute activation here. I get my isometric tension here. I also get a balance drill out of this, which again, for the martial artist in this conversation, that's a productive skill, right? Because who needs to be able to do this? Realistically, somebody whose job is to do that. Alternatively, right, instead of just extending the stance hip, you could turn this into the start position for your actual assisted fire hydrant reps, right? Now that you have that mobility and that stability, you still offload here, but now you switch to raising the leg up and down. By the point you're doing this, it's going to start looking more like a traditional 3 to 5 sets, 5-10 reps. You get the idea, right? For reasons that I don't really have for myself, but worth demonstrating, you could also do the whole thing together and just start running a single leg version. That's hard, right? I don't have an application for that personally, but you get the idea. You can have fun with this. It's your drill now, right? Take it wherever you need to for your sport. And that's the training. Frog pose into a full body, like external, internal rotation focused around the hip into variations of the fire hydrant drill. Go from there.